Good evening and welcome to the quarterly results update from Reliance Industries Limited. As all of you know, we have a very significant energy and materials business, which I will refer to as our hydrocarbons business, and a growing and dominant and very material consumer business in the future. This quarter is a landmark in many ways. Our hydrocarbon business had record financial performance and a standalone profit of 8,022 crores. It's not just a quarterly record, it's the first time our net profits on a standalone basis have exceeded 8,000 crores. On a consolidated basis, excluding exceptionals, we also have another record in profits at 7,506 crores. There are three other developments during this quarter which I would like to highlight before we talk about the macro that we operated in. The first one is that we brought online a part of our paraxylene capacity, which will, on its full commissioning, place us as among the top 3 producers in the world. We had exceptional growth in our retail business, which we will talk about, and we now have by far the largest footprint in India. And as of December end, we had in excess of 72 million subscribers on the Jio network, another global record. With that, let me talk about the macro that we operated in. In this quarter, there were 3 significant developments that will probably impact us in 17-18. Firstly, we saw OPEC, non-OPEC countries sign a historic cooperation, which has led to an immediate increase in oil prices. This has provided tailwind to our E&P business and hopefully margins. Secondly, we saw the impact of the new president-elect in the US with strength in the US dollar as well as rising yields. We have had a 2% depreciation of the rupee in the quarter, which is good on balance for our margins. And thirdly, while we had a short-term impact because of demonetization, thanks to hands-on management, our businesses are back to normal, and more importantly, our organized retail business has grown and is better poised in the future. Let's look at the other macro variables that are relevant for this quarter. Brent prices were roughly $50 per barrel, up nearly 8% quarter on quarter. Currently at $55 a barrel, they are nearly 2 times of the low that we saw in 2016. Henry Hub at $3 per barrel is up nearly 5% quarter on quarter and about 2.5 times what we saw in the middle of 2016. Exchange rate averaged 67.9 during the quarter as compared to 66.7 in the previous quarter. The good news on global oil demand growth is that 2016 probably saw 1.4 million barrels of demand increase, following a 1.8 million barrels increase in 2015. Early estimates for 2017 vary between 1.3 to 1.5 million barrels of global oil demand growth, setting the base for what can be another good year for refining and downstream. In India also, we continued to see strong growth. In the first 9 months, demand for petroleum products is higher by more than 9% year on year. Demand for petrochemical products is also been strong, 9% in polymers and roughly 6% in polyester. In polymers, PVC has been the big surprise with 15% growth in demand year on year, and in polyester, PET has been the star with 34% growth in demand in this quarter. With that, let's look at the financial highlights. On a standalone basis, revenue was up 4% quarter on quarter to 66,606 crores. This revenue growth came basically because of the higher product price environment. PBDIT or EBITDA was up 10% to 13,629 crores, primarily on the back of improving refining margin GRMs went up from $10.1 to $10.8 per barrel. Net performance increased by 10% at 8,022 crores, which, as I said earlier, is a record. Very importantly, return on capital employed continues to improve quarter after quarter. On an unadjusted basis, we have had return on capital employed at 11.1% for this 9-month period, and return on capital employed has grown by a full 2 percentage points in the last 2 years. I would also like to highlight that if we exclude capital work in progress on a consolidated basis, our return on capital employed is about 23%, which is probably the highest in our industry globally. On a consolidated basis, revenue was in excess of 84,000 crores, and the big difference between the consolidated and non-consolidated revenues obviously comes from our retailing business. Profit after tax at 7,506 crores, up 3.6% YOY. The gap between standalone and consolidated is primarily because of E&P. As we look at the quarter, it's quite clear that despite all the volatility, both in input and output prices and macro, the resilient nature of our businesses and a strong management team have delivered yet another record quarter. As far as capital expenditure is concerned, we spent nearly 37,800 crores in this quarter, primarily in Jio and for spectrum, accounting for most of it. As far as net debt is concerned, it was nearly 1,18,000 crores at the end of the quarter. Let's now look at each of our businesses. We start with refining. GRM of $10.8 per barrel as compared to $10.1 in the previous quarter. Demand up strongly both internationally as well as in India, roughly 9% in India. 11% demand growth in gasoline, again one of the highest in emerging markets, and roughly 4% growth in diesel demand in the country. Crude processing in this quarter was 17.8 million tons, a touch lower than previous quarter, primarily because of a planned shutdown. Reliance outperformed Singapore complex by a big number, $4.1 per barrel. Our 5-year average on this is $2.7 a barrel. EBIT at 6,194 crores, clearly improving quarter on quarter because of the gross refining margin. As we look at this quarter, some things really stand out. Both light and middle distillate margins improved quarter on quarter. Light heavy differentials stayed stable, so complex refiners in this region and particularly us benefited. If we look at the individual cracks, regional gasoline cracks at $14.6 per barrel, $3 up from the previous quarter, coming on the back of strong emerging markets demand growth, seasonal turnarounds in refineries in this region. Gas oil cracks a little bit better at $12.1 per barrel, about $1.1 per barrel better than previous quarter, coming out of heating fuel demand. Naphtha cracks improved too on the back of Japanese and Korean crackers coming back on stream. And finally, fuel oil cracks were also better as supplies were reduced in this quarter. Overall, for us, the light heavy differentials remained stable and product margins improved, leading to a better GRM. We continued our emphasis on the domestic retailing business and added about 150 new retail outlets in this quarter. Let's now look at our petrochemical business. Firstly, this business again had a strong quarter. Overall production volume was a little bit down, about 2%, primarily in polypropylene. However, that was made up by new capacities in PTA and strong demand in PET due to restocking. If we look at the segment performance, EBIT at 3,300 crores is down 3.4% Q on Q. but strongly up in excess of 25% on a YOY basis. Really, when we look at the quarter, this is a quarter in which we saw margin expansion in PVC, polypropylene and MEG, and a touch softer margin environment in paraxylene and polyethylene, but overall we had a highly satisfactory margin environment. I would like to point that the PVC delta was the highest in 20 years based on demand from infrastructure and agriculture sectors, and up 13% quarter on quarter. The upstream business is pretty much on status quo. We continued to have lower production both in domestic as well as in our shale gas operations. Consolidated EBIT was negative 295 crores as compared to 491 crores in the previous quarter. Gas realization in India is $2.50 per million BTU on GCV basis. Oil and condensate realization improved to over $43. In shale gas, our share of production is down 30% as we have curtailed investment across all the 3 JVs and for the last 12 months. The good news is that unit realization with improvement in liquid and condensate prices led to 18% YOY improvement in prices. We'll talk about retail now. First, let me emphasize that we are very gratified by the performance of the retail segment in this quarter. We have revenues of 8,688 crores, up 47% YOY. We have by far the biggest footprint of any retailer in India. This is for us a high growth business with expanding margins. EBIT margin in this quarter was 2.7% as compared to 2% in the previous quarter. In terms of footprint, we now have over 3,500 stores in 686 cities. We added 111 stores in this quarter. We have a footprint of over 13 million square feet, and we serve over 3.5 million customers every week. As far as Jio is concerned, its biggest story is around its customer acquisition. As we all know that we added 50 million subscribers in the first 83 days of its launch, and as of December end, we had 72 plus million subscribers on our network. And as you all know, we will have a lot more to say about Jio in the coming quarters. That brings me to the end of my update. Thank you again, and I would also like to take this opportunity to wish you all a great 2017. Thank you.